that what really helps in any society is to have a media that is able to work together with the institutions to bring the public the information that they need to be safe, to be secure, and to be prosperous as a society. The role for the media is so vital in doing that. So there has to be a strong relationship between the institutions like the police, like the government, like the health agencies, so that they can get information across through reporters. The best way to do that is to have open dialogue with each other and say, this is what we need to do in order to do our job. We want to make sure that our public is educated, that our public knows what's going on, that our public is sensitive to the cultural aspects, but is also not naive about reality and understands that we all operate better when we operate with the truth. In America, we have a very, very strong division between the secular and religious, even in the media. So if you are listening to a religious broadcast or a religious news program, you are told that and the viewer is aware of that, but it's very different from the regular secular news. Myself working for ABC, mostly ABC News, it's a secular private corporation where we take obviously the opinions of people in the religious community, but we are not swayed by what their moral or religious ideas are in our stories. We have to report the facts and the information, be sensitive to those things and be sensitive to the cultural and religious aspects, but we, in the secular media, we don't necessarily have to include both sides in that respect. You have a huge challenge in Samoa, the media does, because as has been explained to me today, and something I was not aware of or hadn't thought about, was just the religious and cultural sensitivity that you have to bring to your reporting. And that is something that in my job as an American journalist, I never had to worry about. That's a difficult thing to do. So that's number one. Number two, there seems to be a distrust that's developed between the current administration and the news media, and that's something that both sides need to really work on to get into a room and talk about how to solve that problem. If that means making some changes in the way you report some things, or maybe the details in which you give to some things, so be it. But there has to be some kind of a reciprocity, so that the government gets its job done, but the media gets its important job done as well. I think that the role of the Prime Minister and the media is to work together. The role is to work together because your job, again, is to get information and news out to the public, and his job, of course, is to keep the public safe and to make sure that the society as a whole is working and that, you know, people are getting their needs met. But they can't do that without reality and without the truth. So your job is to work together with the Prime Minister and the government to get that information out there. It would be nice if every government organization had a media public relations person. It's probably not realistic, and it costs a lot of money to do that. So I don't know how realistic it would be to expect that. But what is fair is to expect that there's somebody within every agency and every government organization that has a responsibility to communicate and talk to the media. That is part of their job as well, to get information out. I love to write, and I love to tell stories. I love to meet people, I love to talk to people, I love to share different ideas, and for me, it's an honor to be able to come into people's lives and to be able to learn about them or learn about the circumstances and to share that with other people. I think as a humanity, that's the one thing that we all have, is the need to share ourselves with others and to learn from each other. So for me, it's just always been something that I've loved to do. I decided I wanted to be a journalist when I was 8 years old. So it's just something that, I don't know, was in my heart, and I feel blessed and I feel lucky that I've been able to do it all these years. So for me, it's a very noble profession, and it's also a profession that comes with a lot of responsibility, and you have to be willing to accept that responsibility. But if you do, the rewards are immense, because you get a chance to really share in people's lives and in their experiences. And to me, that's the ultimate human experience, to be able to share in people's lives. I think journalists coming up now have it harder than ever. When I started out in journalism, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have social media, we didn't have all these other ways to get information out. Now, some of those things are wonderful because the internet can be used for great, great things. Raises money for victims. It does some wonderful things. It brings people together. It brings families together. But it also can be a disseminator of negative and false information. And it also can be a hotbed for people that have deranged ideas, as we've seen recently in the New Zealand shooter. So the new reporters coming up have to learn how to disseminate real information from false information. And that's going to be really, really difficult. And I am thankful that I grew up in a media age that we didn't have to deal so much with that, because I think it's very hard. I even find myself, I read 3 papers a day, and I'm a news junkie. Like, I read everything. And I read also the news online, and I'm just a huge consumer. But I'm amazed, I'll read a story online and then I'll read the same story in the newspaper and get totally different information. You think, wait a minute, is this the same story? So I think reporters are going to have to learn to be very, very careful in the information that they put out there. Make sure your facts are correct. Make sure you have at least 2 corroborating sources. And make sure that you don't rush to get a story out there because you want to be first. Make sure it's right, because that's what's most important in our profession. The most challenging day of my life was on September 11th, 2001. I was at the airport when the plane struck the Twin Towers in New York. We were actually on our way, Scott and I were on our way to Italy that day, and we didn't know what had happened. All we knew that there was some kind of a plane crash. They turned all the TVs off in the airport so that no one would know what was going on. Well, the 2 planes that crashed in New York came from our airport. So we were in the airport, I'm sure, at the same time as the terrorists were, which was really a weird thing to think about. Anyway, after that happened, for the next month, I basically lived at the airport, and I did the reporting for ABC News, and the FBI and all the investigators did their work out of Boston, because that's where the original terrorists had formulated their plan. That was the most trying. That was the most trying by far. And I've had a lot of really trying assignments, but that was by far the most trying. The happiest stories I've ever done have been the smallest and silliest ones. One that comes to mind is a little boy who had cancer and he wanted to be a fireman. He was 3 years old, he wanted to be a fireman. So the local firefighters had a parade for him, and they gave him a fire hat, and they had a whole parade downtown, and townspeople came out and they celebrated, and just the look on his face was just the most gorgeous thing. So when I'm thinking I'm having a bad day and I can't, make a difference in anyone's lives, you think about a story like that and a little boy like that who got a parade like that because his mother had written into a local newspaper and said, my son's going to die of cancer and he wants to be a firefighter. So they made him a firefighter for a day, and he did. He died, like months after that. But he had that joy for that day. We have the responsibility, but also the blessing of bringing a lot of joy to people. And that's an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing to get that kind of responsibility. So from that aspect, I guess that's kind of what keeps you going, is being able to tell stories of, people who thrive and continue to move on and continue to work hard despite the most amazing hardship. Telling stories of just perseverance. Those are the ones that I have enjoyed the most.